welcome to episode 73. Blue, how are you doing?
Very, very good today, Mike.
Hey, what do we talk about today in episode 73?
Merlin, ancient Masonic lineage, how it signifies into several outlets in the magic order, including alchemy and the arts itself. And we already know about how Merlin kind of insinuates with the sword, Arthur and the sword, and the round table. But the deeper cooperative figure goes much, much more pronounced than this. And it even runs into the elixir of life of what we had discussed prior in another show when it dealt with Flamel. That even goes older on its own version.
Well, sounds like we got a lot to talk about like we usually do. We usually have a pretty full show, so I'm interested in trying to keep our time limit today if we can. But that's okay. I enjoy when we go over if we have to go over. That's a fine. Hey, we thank you for watching us. Thank you for checking us out, listening to us. Wherever you're watching or listening, please make sure you subscribe, give us a thumbs up. You can communicate with us through the socials as well. We do respond, so I do appreciate everybody doing that. Blue, let's get right to 73 here.
Absolutely, Merlin. So, supposedly a mythical figure, prominently featured in the legend of King Arthur and best known as a magician. But it intertwines into another figure in ancient lineage. And so when we're going into the historical and legendary figures, it was introduced by 12th century Catholic cleric of Geoffrey Armagnac and then built on by French poet Robert de Baron. But what gets interesting with this is with Merlin himself, when it goes into the historic figures, we goes into the Arthurian legends and the Masonic order. What does the Masonic order itself, even currently nowadays, have to do with alchemy and the arts and Merlin and or the figure that represented this entity at the time? Augmented running streams that direct the fields of alchemy situate with this potential coordinator who had helped to a certain monumental figurative elements that would help prolong the lifespans, as well as directing certain elements into light and utilizing that refractive light. Merlin himself, and when it goes into the Mason order, had ran and adopted upon traditions and symbols. And currently it still stands with the order itself that runs through that and what he had in the past. So Arthurian legends depict the mainframe of where Merlin stands today and how certain arts go into the effect. When we had gone in the past about talking about the elixir of life, we were going to also go and talk about and explain some symbolic representations that run through the hierarchies and refinement codes that go throughout the ages of the fine arts with alchemy itself and running through directive speeds to help prolong lifespans and using the certain elements through magic. He had supernatural powers and abilities, but his most notable abilities made for common shape-shifting of properties and the prophecies themselves. And certain prophecies he had acclaimed into the order. And the Masonic order runs and dwells with that legend. And it goes into the Knights of the Round Table.
So is it possible that we have a Merlin type character or Merlin type person around today? Is it possible we've always had people like this? It just they kind of guide society, they kind of help people, sometimes hurt people, I guess. Is it fair to say we have those same people today?
Well, certain treatments that he had maintained in the past, and including healing and as well as utilizing the elements, have been dictated and maintained through the hierarchy of the royal order, as well as scientific measures in the days now currently. So current sciences could have an effect with alchemy in the past. Because if you think about it, what they're already using with pharmaceuticals, well, they have to mix elements, do they not? They have to use certain things to make another equation. Even goes with refined metals. So potentially they had gotten to these legends and they had dealt with these figures in the past that had fluctuated what currently is stands now, using similar types of elements that they have gained.
Hmm. Hmm. I wonder if Elon Musk would be our Merlin today.
Potentially, if you think about the Neuralink and Neuraltech standards, utilizing certain augmented neural incapacitated wavelengths and frequency-based tones to redirect the molecular structure of the mind, as well as certain re-augmented regenerative plateaus to help with disabilities. I mean, it's not just elements too, but if you mix and sequence elements with frequencies, you can do something. You can combine them both because humans do run in an electromagnetic impulse field. They have some type of electro field about them,
Hmm.
and it can affect certain things around that because of the authorical based stranding line.
Hmm. Is it possible that Merlin, and or Merlin type people throughout history, is it possible they are from some other place, some other time, some other dimension, some other place in space? Is it possible? If not, maybe they had contact with somebody from another dimension, another time, outer space, what have you. Is that possible, you think?
Merlin could have come from Tartaria or the outer Earthen realms past the Antarctic wall. It could have come from another timeline dimension or maintained at that type of elevated speed because he have a better cognitive output on his inner psyche code. There are and there have existed magicians throughout the timeline since the beginning. And magic has been something that can insinuate and be manipulated through energy itself. Pretty much anybody can utilize magic in a way, but it's the distribution of the art and the way it goes through it. Alchemy, more or less, is something you're utilizing with elements, and you're utilizing it in maneuvering those elements around and seeing what they will do to help.
Hmm. Well, I'm glad that, for the most part anyway, it appears that most of the people that we know about that could be a Merlin or Merlin himself, I think it's fair to say, from what history tells us anyway, that those guys were pretty much good guys.
Yes, from what was being obtained throughout the ages, there was a gain over time. So the benefits of the stability of the mind set that this entity had, as well as the capabilities of the properties, help stabilize the foundations for certain orders here currently. And it ain't just him. I mean, you think about Nikola Tesla, when he was taken from him and either supposedly died or disappeared, or they had acclimated all his technologies and took that away. But is it being used today? Yes. The Tesla arcs are hidden, they're around, but they're there. And there was an acclimated energy source given to them by Tesla. Was he from this timeline? No. In the end, no. In the end, Nikola Tesla wasn't even distributed all the way human altogether. Just like Merlin, just like Flamel, just like all these other entities, that they had a residual effect of something based on their property altogether, something different. And
Crazy.
that helps create and inflict what could potentially maintain throughout the timelines on the current plane of existence.
Hmm. I like how this kind of ties together with our next subject here. Are we ready to move on to mummification?
Well, just yes. But one more thing noted when it came to Merlin and Harry Potter, we had talked about Flamel. He also, if you noted and pay attention to this, it talked about the Order of Merlin, an organization in the Middle Ages. So, I mean, they're going to put all these fake things on for people to watch. Maybe you should see the context and the codes and clues that are being played out in there because there are real entities intertwined into this. What is our Order of Merlin? Maybe they're talking about Knights of the Round Table. They're talking about something else associated. The Masonic Order had included Merlin several times over. It's there.
Something else. That's crazy stuff. That's crazy stuff. I'm glad that we're able to talk about that. I think it's kind of neat though, because we are going to talk about the Argarthan levels here at some point here. I think our next topic here with the alien mummification. Let's get into that. I'm really excited for that.
Can you give me 1 second, Mike?
Yeah. Hey, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, wherever you're listening and watching. If we're not where you find your stuff, let us know, and we will do our best to get on where you find your stuff. You okay over there, Blue?
Yeah, I had to turn some noise down from the
No
background.
worry. No worry. Thank you for doing that.
Okay, so back on alien mummification.
Yes.
So supposedly humans in the burial grounds and making mummification was their own terms. But we need to go deeper than that because the reality banks run through aliens, ETs, humanoids, and the property speeds of how they on a royal hierarchy base had created mummification for certain rites. And as well as there are entities that are mummified amongst humankind in several sectors, zones, and areas situated across the planet, interconnects into the inner Garthan realms, or Tartaria, if you will, runs into semi-indicator events. Now, this gets interesting, people. So we're talking about that, and we're going to go to Easter Island. So Easter Island in the Moya, it also coordinates with Mu, but we'll get into that. So Easter Island, the Moya, the people of the Moyas. Now, they said supposedly the Rapa Nui says that the statues walked. So we got these native people and the traditions, and they had said, the indigenous people said it supposedly. Why would they say that? Number one, the Moya do not even look entirely human, but the humanoid in structure. Just like there are several other statues or depictions out there across the planet, representative for a certain reason. They were a short humanoid race, and their faces were the basis for the monoliths on Easter Island. Blue skin, had 3 digits for their hands and feet. They possessed ample cranial space and a large nasal cavity. There are similarities to a certain other or entities, I believe. The Olmec, which have a conjuncture potentially to that. Now, the Moya and the lost connection to the ancient land of Mu, though, runs into Atlantis. And so we are also coordinating to several sectors and or perimeters. So symbols, architecture, phenomenon, myths run around certain cultures of the world and continue to insinuate to this. So the Olmec, they look similar to the entities that run through that, but they run as through with Mexico. The Olmec are more an adaptability to what they had on a coordination speed. The passes, give me 1 minute. So there are a couple other sectors that intertwine. The Anunnaki, the giants, represent Egypt. They had represented through China. There had been mummifications or burials, graveyards of giants. And they have also represented through certain other areas and hierarchies. Those bases of the Anunnaki are the main directives that had helped stability and profound life for mankind and other innovators throughout the planets. They do run with the races that coordinate to the NK Gray, the Ankara, which run in Egypt, and those mummification chambers, which had been acclimated in the past and found through with the KGB. They do sinuate to the Giza platforms, and as well through the Sphinx and run under the platforms of the lost chambers of Atlantis, as well as libraries, vast libraries that the Illuminati, a Vatican order, hold. Now, certain entities would go through Peru, where they had found a mummified extraterrestrial. We're going to go into the grays because the Anunnaki and a certain of those are the humanoids, by the way, we're talking about. Now we're talking more or less the grays on mummification scale. Because humans only are known and aware of regular humans being mummified. There's more to that. There's the humanoids, which we had discussed. Mermaids are more of an turned directive between a humanoid and a gray, but more or less a gray substandard. They run through Atlantis.
So is what you're saying that mermaids could be from some other place, some other time, some other dimension, some other planet?
They're the aqua inner lands domain to the Terro societies. So they are the humanoid advanced structures that run through the inner Atlantis aqua domains. And it's still sequenced into certain events, I believe, in the diametrics that run through unallowed zones past the Antarctic and certain areas under the water, and as well as Bermuda through certain areas in the Bermuda Triangle. Now, the Peruvian or the Peruvian gray, which was recently supposedly found a few years ago, is a link up to the Russian grays that they had found. So why coordinate into relay zones similar grays? It's because they had several areas and receptors that they run with. And for humans to understand why we're talking about mummification in the first place, it's because they had hierarchies that based on augmentation speed to help. You need to think about the Mayan civilizations and the pyramids and all that other stuff, how they had gained that knowledge. They had acclimated races that are higher beings of humanoids and or extraterrestrials that had maintained those code of ethics through those timelines, either disappeared or transacted into another area of effect, but it still gained that knowledge and kept it. Most of that is still hidden. And I guarantee you the stuff through the trilateral platforms of Giza, Egypt, the Bermuda Triangle, Atlantis, Antarctica, all that stuff everywhere. And even in the Mayan civilizations and what they had gained, they hide that extra information and only given so much to mankind out there. And we're talking about who really hides is mainly the royal order.
I,
So,
I was gonna say, what a surprise!
oh, that we're
You
going to
mean they're hiding information on us? This has never been done. I've never heard of this.
absolutely. And then the Vatican order. We're going to talk about that real quick. And with the Vatican order, they have a directed mummy or entity there. Two small mummies in the Vatican museums, Egyptian collection. Intrigued scholars for decades, often called Swedu mummies due to their unusual appearance. They believed to be ancient, contain the remains of other small 200 animals, and we already know that's bullshit, okay? we know something else is in there besides that, because if not, they have a copy of that and they're coordinating something else altogether that they're hiding. I'm gonna go there with you. If you ever watched Hellboy the movie, and they had talked about Vatican in there and they've certain entities, just saying, in real life they might hide similar objects, similar things. They might do that. Plain sight. Analysis shows, they don't, the curious objects is an unknown biopsy speed and been around for a while that they're holding.
I think it's fascinating that we talk about this because we've known that we've been visited by other peoples, other dimensions, what have you, over time, over the course of what, and again, time is a human construct. It's something man created to lineate things. And we know time, as we understand it, they try to explain it as being linear, but it's not linear. I, I'm just fascinated by we've known these things through all these times, yet still, I think we're just now on the cusp of the people coming forward and go, look, enough of the bullcrap. Just tell us what's going on. And we've
What do you think?
Absolutely. You got to put the bits and pieces there. Because if people just bypass that, they're not going to see the reality of it.
crazy,
One
crazy
other
stuff.
thing, I mean, gray mummification goes into a whole other scenario, big. Grays, like our species, and I'm insinuated as a hybrid. We preserve in a different wavelength through mummification through our own species. And it actually keeps our preservation and our DNA intact for hundreds of thousands of years, more than a human's regular entertainment speed. What we do is preserve through a molecular preservation and light refractive code, and be able to liquidate a certain matter within our biomaterials and redirect that at a slow stasis speed. There,
Interesting.
yeah, there's other ways too, but it creates an intact genetic code that helps keep the DNA intact well after the entity's gone.
Discovered is there have
Times, dimensions, or places being mummified. I'm wondering if that was brought here or whether they took that away from us. I tend to think it was brought here. What do you say?
Two separate motives. If it goes with extraterrestrial modification of the actual ET, it runs on a different genetic line, like I said. But the Anunnaki themselves are the base substandard to helping bring that into and provision for mankind. That's why the situators, the giants there, and then several other link ups, including Egypt, China, and several other places across the planet, run into these type of equations. So, if we're talking about the ancient hierarchies or demigods like Hathor or is everything good? You there, Mike?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Hathor or running even to Poseidon or another semi-indicator wave of other demigods have a situational propositional speed of an Anunnaki bloodline within them. And they had definitive motives, even those that run through the hierarchies and legends of Egypt and other betrayal speeds had that. And that sinuated speed had run through the main hierarchy that helped mankind. bring that into reality. So yes, you are right, Mike. It was brought here, most likely mainly by that ancient council.
So if it's brought here, and now we see what we consider to be a mermaid type creature, kind of mummified. I don't know, was that a natural mummification by accident, or was that practice as well amongst mermaids?
Well, there's natural mummification too that can happen without the wrapping and everything, and it's because of the certain DNA structure was intact because of elemental status quo at the time, something affecting it. Sometimes it does happen. It preserves it. Like an entity dies in the glaciers, per se, or you're dealing with a mammoth and it's still intact. It just turned mummified after a time. It turned fossilized, but the DNA was intact through that. As a
Mm-hmm.
different type sequencing base, it's not exactly similar to what we're stating, but yes, there are mummified entities out there, just shriveled up codes that have somehow gotten preserved, somehow in some way. It happens, Mike. You find fully intact humans for. I mean, I got it of a mummified human on here too. It's 4,000 years old or whatever on no entity, but it still somehow got preserved in some way.
Yeah, and some of these pictures you can see there is some sort of natural mummification.
Yeah.
I find the whole thing very interesting, though, that mummification can be accidental, if you will. So,
This one was wrapped, the one that was 4,000, but there are ones that are just intact altogether and had some type of preservation way because, like I said, the elements can affect it. If it's cold, you know, cryogenic stasis mode. I've heard about people how they can get preserved in a way through that. I mean, if it's cold enough and you die off there and you're stuck in that frozen beta speed, yeah, you'll eventually shrivel up, but you'll still in some way be preserved. There are other ways, yes, but the mummification burial rites and ceremonies that they go through these are a bit different, and they run through royal hierarchies.
would you want to be mummified?
I I can't say yes or no.
Isn't that crazy?
I
Isn't that
don't
crazy?
know.
I think it's awesome. I think the whole thing is awesome. How about if you did some sort of other preservation like they have now with the nitrous or whatever, where they cool you? I guess.
Yeah, cryogenic stasis. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
Would you do that?
Potentially, but there's also liquid that can be formulated or hyperactive light directed speed that can incubate the proportional augmented code of the entity, and
All
as
right.
well as a hyperamulated sleep status code. You
So
have
here's
heard
what
about hibernation before, right?
yes.
Well,
Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna get those companies that do that type practice. I'm gonna get them to sponsor us. And if I die first in 20 years, 100 years, however long it is, I want you to I want you to continue the show in my head, okay? And you'll be around though. You'll be around forever, Blue. Is that true? You being usual, do you have a longer lifespan?
I guess it depends on the higher order of things upon this planet. But until then, myself, including other star seeds, we do everything we can to help mankind. And whether we're here now or here then, we are who we are. And it is what it is, Mike. So
It's
I'm
awesome.
happy to be here. I'm happy to be here. I am.
That's awesome. Words from Blue Crystal and Phoenix here. We're almost ready to get into the SC Foundation.
We do have one more thing to discuss, Mike,
Okay.
and aqua dimensional highways. Now, we've already known about paranormal plateaus or scenery effects through highways that run in through directive speeds of certain entities, but we also have the water levels and the Kraken. We've obviously known about, but we have a certain entity similar to that run into the Antarctic. Now we also, as well as leviathans, sea serpents, and other creatures unknown, even including jellyfish or creatures just coming out from nowhere. There are levels underneath the water that run directly into the inner Garthan realms. Those Garthan realms have sublevel tunnels. So they link up between those waters and these waters. And we know about, in biblical terms, that we hear about the waters of heavens, that heaven split up.
parts. So yeah, I see.
I just, as we talk about Agartha, as we talk about this whole thing with the mummification, as we talk about beings from another dimension or another place, is it possible that I could go out tomorrow and run into an Agarthan person or someone that came from Agartha? Is that possible?
There's potential representations of portals being open or other entities stepping through or disappearing or something proportionally going into existence. It doesn't make sense. It happens.
Hmm. Do
These
you think it's
happen.
what do you think it's plausible that not only can that happen, but we've noted that the 2/3 of the planet's water, that a lot of these things may have been spotted over time as USOs, like maybe between that and between Antarctica, those are potential entry points to the Agarthan realm. So while everybody's looking up at the stars and at different planets and different formations and everything, what really should be doing is looking under the water, looking in Antarctica, looking at the places to get us to that inner realm. If that's fair to say.
Yeah, there's several highways that run in and around the oceans here in the land and run directly into those roadways. And they connect with cryptids, paranormal phenomenon, and legends. And they come in and out. That's why people don't see them all the time. They have a way to go between the two scenario effects. It kind of makes you think about certain movies like King Kong. How the recent ones too, how they had to go between these portals to get there, these wavelengths to get to the what they would call a Garth, I guess, in that movie. But if you think about it, you know, makes sense because there's a lot of creatures out there that just don't show up all the time and then they disappear. Or they
Yeah,
got
I've always
things that come into existence that has never been there before. And then they got to make it up, including those in the water levels.
yeah, I've always thought that there's certain beings that you just look at them or you understand about them and you think that that creature's too intelligent to just have been here. Like for instance, I think it's possible that maybe octopus, maybe dolphin, maybe starfish, maybe jellyfish, things of that nature. I think it's fair to assume not only do they look like they're from another planet, another space, another time, but they very well meld.
Dolphins are connected with Atlantis. We talked before about it. They connect with the mermaids. There have been ancient writings, drawings in certain areas across the planet that show what depict of mermaids with spears and some look like dolphins or whatever, humans and stuff. And yes, you can look that, you can find it, but the adaptability, because why dolphins are so smart is because they had run through another dimension that's linked up to this dimension. That's why you have even intellectual dolphins nowadays assisting humans or just doing things, on a higher adaptability speed. Where
It's
did they
also
get all that
fascinating.
knowledge? Where did they get it from?
it's also fascinating to me because I know we talk about the SCP Foundation on a show by show basis here, and one of the things that I find fascinating is we've talked about this is a way to hide things in plain sight. It's the same thing with those creatures we talked about from the ocean, hiding in plain sight. They're not really hiding; they're hiding in plain sight. I also saw some interesting stuff. I I'm not a flat Earth person, but the more I see of this, the way people have laid stuff out, I mean, it's starting to lend me to get in there. And I know that's another show, and I know we've talked about it in the past for, but I don't know. Maybe someone made the example, and I'll just say it. Somebody made the example that outer space means in the outer spaces around the wall of Antarctica. Like that's the outer spaces. And the planets aren't really planets. Those are different areas. Like we're still on a level plane somewhere throughout the universe. I thought that was very interesting. I'm sure I'm chopping that up and messing that up somehow and not making it as easy to understand as I think I have it. But are we ready to get into SCP Foundation?
Absolutely. 5469. And it is a structure formerly known as Winnie's Diner. And this is an interesting thing because we have talked about structures before, but what this is in the former town of Faraday, Georgia. And there are various entities that manifest within it throughout the day. So depicting that there is an interdimensional timeline maneuver that is stuck upon a certain paradoxical form. This entity resituates itself or restarts every day, but it comes upon these the situations where if you go into them, the interaction would not like it's not on a very reformed interaction speed, but they have been able to interact somewhat with the entities. Before it resets, though, they get into conversations and they pretty much do and deal with stuff that's within that timeline period within the diamond. So, all in all, there's a timeline paradox stuck on a dimensional turnover, and it keeps resetting itself, and entities keep showing up within that time paradox.
Isn't that crazy? So if time is linear, that wouldn't be possible. I mean, we just talked about that. Is this something if I have to? There's no way I'm going to accidentally run into this diner and accidentally. This looks like a hotel.
Well, I mean, the entities, like I said, it resets every day. The entities are pretty much stuck within the residual format speeds of the structure. And there has been potential of the foundation members trying to interact with them, but it only got little bits and pieces of it,
Hmm.
of what they are doing and within the actual diner itself. So
Wonder
it's
what the
a
lunch special
continuum
is.
reset of the timeline dimension.
What do you think lunch special is there at the diner? What do you think? What do you think they specialize in there? Pies, cakes, coffee, burgers. What do you think?
Well, since the situational effect was set at December 21st, 1987, kind of hard to say.
Hmm. It's crazy. That's like literally going from one time and place. It's time travel and exotic travel, I guess. So again, there's no way I'm gonna run into this. This is just contained, right?
Pretty much, yes. I mean, each entity within it has been successfully identified as a former Faraday resident that either worked at or patronized at the diner. So an etheric stranding figure of the dimension insinuated between those entities and coordinated on that plateau itself and reconstructed the variables. Think about spirits. It's not considered a threat, more or less a timeline maneuver.
Different time period.
Wow, that's interesting. Interesting stuff here. You ready to move on to the next SCP?
Yes, 5579. 5579 is a parasitic alien life form present in and responsible for all modern forms of tapioca. Interesting enough, historically a common shrub and Euscleta subspecies, then barely edible root, had emerged, and the new subspecies produce thick tubers. So these entities that had coordinated in that and run into the cassava root had simulated speeds of the parasite represented within it. But they are not considered harmful because most of them, when they do enter the organism of the entity, they pretty much die off or cause mild stomach problems.
All right, I'm looking at this picture here, and I know you saw the picture. I know you probably can't see the picture now, but I've never had boba tea, and that's what this kind of looks like. Have you had boba tea before, Blue? A thing now. It's a craze now. You should see. You should on the World Wide Webs there and check that out. There's places everywhere where they serve boba tea, and it kind of looks. I've seen some. It kind of looks that way to me. But this is something that's contained. I'm not going to go to a boba tea place and accidentally run into this, am I?
No. I mean, supposedly they have coordinated into tapioca and other substructures, but even with the active parasitism, when consumed, the organism quickly succumbs to the host digestive processes. One of the more reasons why they potentially put it into scientific terms and set it outwards. It may not hurt the entity. Immune system response, simple chemical tolerance. So even if garden snails, their growth is halted by the shedding of the mucus layers of run through that. But the human's digestive tract is especially affected though, and in neutralizing the component. So they pretty much is a travel speed. You know, you're digesting something and it's traveling elsewhere. So potentially maybe these entities, these parasitic organisms are just finding a way to travel through certain means.
I could actually envision what these things look like. Now, for those of you who haven't been looking, if you don't have the video, you're just listening to the podcast part. I've got like several like brandy snifter type glasses there with this boba row in it, and it's kind of just intriguing to me that this is the thing, and I can relate to it in the outside world. Not well, I'm familiar with it. I'm glad this is contained. I'm glad we talk about it, but I can tell you honestly, after looking at these pictures, I won't be drinking any boba tea anytime soon. I love these SCPs. We talk about hiding stuff in plain sight, and some people say it's real, some people say it's a game, some people say it's whatever you say it is. I say it's hiding stuff in plain sight. We've talked about it time and time again, and I think it's wonderful that we talk about it. Are we almost ready to move on to the Space Force and the Federation?
Absolutely. Tennessee plants tunnel to Nashville Airport with Elon Musk's Boring Company. So, yeah, we talked about moving a potential Stargate, as well as dimensional accessing terms to renovating certain diametrics underground instead of catalyzing so much of bad infrastructure from above. And eventually, the Boring Company would substantially motivate and incubate subtunnels that would link up into hyperdimensional activated wave codes. So they're able to hyperloop or hyperjump between several locations. This
You know,
is
I
pardon.
wonder, and I'm sorry to butt in there, but I wonder, is this the future? Is he gonna? tunnel his way to Argartha maybe someday.
Well, I mean, some internal tunnels should help relieve a lot of the obstruction from above. But in coordinates to the consideration that SpaceX would create domains of Hyperloop tunnels that would catalyze between the dimensions. So when they cross over these certain gateways in these tunnels, they're skipping through Hyperloop holes, and potentially can run right into Mars on the dimensional teleportation access, and as well as augmentation speed to certain other areas. Advancements of these, I'm going to say they're extraterrestrial-based technologies. Elon Musk is an entirely human-like people perceiving he has assistants that coordinated through these terms in potential future to helping and alleviating a lot of what we don't need for vehicles.
Wow, that's crazy. This guy, we can't go a show without talking about him, and it's just fascinating to me that we still talk about him. I'm comparing him to Merlin earlier. We talk about him on every show, whether it's Starlink, whether it's the Boring Company, whether it's what he did on Capitol Hill, whether it's Tesla, whatever it is. This guy is all over it. So love him or hate him, say what you will, agree with what he did or does, the guy's fascinating. He's brilliant, and we're living with our Benjamin Franklin. We're living with our Tesla, our Thomas Edison. We're living with our Da Vinci, our Copernicus. We're living with people that are changing humanity. Think about the last 50 years, Blue. We've had so much just in the past 50 years. I argue more so than we did the previous 2,000 years. So it's kind of crazy. And again, I apologize for butting in on your stuff about the Space Force and Federation. Anything else to report from the Space Force and Federation?
Well, Donald Trump just dealing with elevated negative terms with this Epstein thing. He's saying request release of the Epstein documents, but says nothing will be enough for the troublemakers. I mean, we need to continue support for mankind instead of continuing a support for negativity between each other. It is what it is, and the Epstein files runs deeper than even him, and it can coordinate with Biden and other elites and celebrity figures. But in the end, as a whole, we need to consider the peace treaties. We need to consider the things that Donald Trump could do for good, or even or other elite figures of what they can do, what they have done already, and what you as other leaders across the planet could do to help assist us. We don't need a nuclear event. If we're going to have a nuclear event, then we're going to make an event where those nuclear weapons are turned into nuclear sciences or something to help mankind. Because otherwise, we're going to end up on World War III, and we are on that brink. And we don't want that. It will be a recontinued version of a demolishment of mankind. And they are given provisions right now from other entities and corporations to help stabilize them, but they have to motivate themselves away from the negativity. It's as simple as that. So when we're coming into this golden age, Donald Trump, yes, he does want peace, but does everybody else? There are still some that don't. So where are we fighting? Why are we fighting? Why? I don't get it. I don't. I really don't. It just don't make sense. So we really got to stop this. And the concernant laws through SpaceX and power outages, because they had they had a widespread power outage in a scrub emission, and there's been utilized power outages throughout the planet. And there's one of several reasons is because his outage was more or less because of an internal software failure they could incorporate better for. But when it comes to AI communications and satellites, because they already have a lot of that out there now, they need to see what they can situate better to protect that. Because that just doesn't affect that, it can affect a whole lot of things. The elements, the tsunamis recently, HARP, DARPA, NOAA, entities like ourselves of their paranormal accounts, dimensions have been turned over recently, and they are escalating worse. is one of the reasons why we're getting so much bad weather. The whole dimension is being turned over on its access point. It is not, yeah, it may be helping with the coordinates of negative corporations, but we have the actual elemental access point being turned over. If you pay attention, all the other things going on. But I'm going to explain to you right now, some of these unnatural weather phenomena on an escalated scale, they are being dominated by certain corporations to help take away an or a certain amount of mankind, or in field effect of that zoning area to catalyze an issue.
Wow. It's almost like you're telling me that somebody else can control these things and it's not climate change or whatever you want to call it. Crazy stuff, Lou. Crazy stuff. I'm glad we talk this stuff on a regular because I couldn't make this stuff. I'm kind of a historian and I'm saving some stuff. I save shows, I save clippings, I save all sorts of stuff because I want my kids, grandkids, and great grandkids to know the truth. I don't want them to have to rely on some sort of media source. So I'm gonna have the truth for them because who's gonna be in charge in 60 years? I don't know. What are they gonna write history as? I don't know. That's kind of scary that you have to think about that. Hey, are we ready to talk about ET of the week?
Absolutely. The curse, KURS, believed to be directly related to the race Anunnaki. But the Anunnaki are more humanoid structure, and these are biomixed beings, and they have more of a mantoid substructure, sub-inlet gray, as well as a humanoid. They come from the planet Dilemons. They are behind the story of Enlil and Ea. They are aka gods of lands, so directly involved in the development of the human race. So it's not just the Anunnaki Council themselves, but they have several other star races that signalized the DNA substructures and maintaining certain circulated waves of the humans and other entities upon the lands. So after centuries from Earth, they recently returned. It is written that their own rules is among the visitors. They are not leaving anymore. They have important roles on the years to come, and they still work and coordinate along with the Anunnaki Council. They spend most of their time though on precious gold, liquid gold. Presumably extends their lifespans. So there are, like I said, remember about the mummification. There we go again. They have an extensive lifespan of maintaining their variables in a liquid element. So that way they can be preserved. And there are many terrestrials out there that do it in maneuvering between their star units or even from underground until a certain time.
That's crazy to think about. And this is a guy that's kind of in between, or is he is a good guy?
And they're good. They helped create the articulated DNA structure of mankind, certain other subspecies. So obviously good.
Are you familiar with your race as a fusel? They're partners with this character, the
Yes,
Kerr?
they intertwine into the Federation, the Intergalactic Federation Council. They
Okay.
have been coming and going for a long time. Similar species to this have worked along with certain governments in the past and still may do.
Is there a possibility I'm going to run into one of these?
No. They do not show themselves unless it's a certain representatives here on this planet, just like many others. They have rules and laws and regulations. You know, that's why mankind's stuck in the box that they are, not allowed out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they dissect it and push it away from the realities of what's going on here, and then from the realities of a whole nother dimension, a whole nother paranormal.
Pains here, but I do want to thank everyone.
Thank you for listening. Wherever you get your stuff, if we're not there, we'll help tell us and we'll get on there. You can respond. You can talk to us on the socials. We will respond. You can always check us out just about everywhere you find stuff. So, again, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.